In the winter of 1930, a seasoned trapper arrived at a remote Inuit village on the frozen shore of Anjikuni Lake and found it waiting. Fires still smoldered, food sat ready, lamps burned low, sled dogs lay frozen in their harnesses, and every man, woman, and child was gone. The North is a place of extremes, beauty and brutality, life and death balanced on a knife edge. Here, survival is a shared effort, and communities endure because they must. That's why what happened at Anjikuni Lake is so disturbing. It wasn't just that people vanished, it was how they vanished. Without warning, without trace, without reason. The man who stumbled upon this mystery was Joe Labelle, a trapper who knew the land and its people. He wasn't prone to superstition. He was practical, methodical, and used to the strange silences of the wilderness. But what he found on that frozen shore would haunt him for the rest of his life. Labelle had been traveling for days, his sled creaking under the weight of furs and supplies. The air was so cold it bit at the inside of his nose, turning each breath into a sharp sting. The snow beneath his snowshoes gave a muted crunch, the sound quickly swallowed by the vast emptiness around him. He knew this route well. It led to a small Inuit settlement on the shores of Anjikuni Lake, a place he'd visited many times to trade and rest. The people there were resourceful, warm, and welcoming. They lived in harmony with the land, their lives shaped by the rhythm of the seasons. That afternoon, as he crested a low ridge, he saw the village in the distance, a cluster of snow-dusted huts huddled near the frozen shoreline. Thin trails of smoke curled from a chimney or two, smudging the pale sky. But something was wrong. Even from here, he could tell. There was no movement, no figures tending to sleds, no children darting between huts, no dogs barking. The silence was not the peaceful quiet of the wilderness. It was heavy, expectant, like a room where someone had just stepped out, leaving the air behind them charged. Labelle slowed, scanning the snow for tracks. There were none. The paths between the huts were smooth, unbroken. He called out, his voice carrying across the frozen ground. No answer. At the first hut, the door stood slightly open. He pushed it wider with the butt of his mittened hand. Inside, the fire still smoldered, a pot of stew hanging over it. The smell was rich, warm, but the room was empty. A pair of boots sat by the door, dusted with fresh snow. A coat hung neatly on the wall. It was as if someone had stepped outside moments ago and never returned. On the table, 2 bowls sat beside a loaf of bread, a knife resting mid-cut. A spoon lay askew, a single drop of broth frozen on the wood. The bed was unmade, blankets thrown back as if someone had risen suddenly. He stepped back outside. The cold closed over him instantly, crisp and clean and empty. His own boot prints were the only marks in the snow. He moved from hut to hut. In each one, the same scene repeated. Clothes neatly folded, weapons stacked in corners, food stores untouched, beds unmade. In one home, a sewing project lay unfinished, the needle still threaded. In another, a child's toy sat abandoned on the floor. A lamp burned low in a corner, its flame stubborn against the cold. The air inside each hut was warmer than outside, but it carried a strange stillness, as though the rooms themselves were holding their breath. The fires were not roaring, but glowing embers suggested they had been tended recently, within hours perhaps. There were no signs of struggle, no overturned furniture, no broken doors, no blood. Just the eerie sense of lives interrupted mid-motion. By the time he reached the last hut, a pulse had begun to climb behind his eyes. He was no stranger to solitude, but this was different. This was absence made physical, a hollow in the world where people should be. Behind the huts, Labelle found the sled dogs. They were still tied to their posts, but they were dead, frozen solid, their bodies curled in the snow. Their ribs showed through their fur. They had been left without food or water for days. For the Inuit, dogs were life. They were never abandoned, never left to die. This made no sense. The sight gnawed at him more than the empty homes. People might leave in a hurry, but to leave the dogs, their only means of travel, was unthinkable. At the edge of the village lay the burial ground. The snow there was disturbed. Several graves had been opened. The wooden markers were stacked neatly to one side, the earth beneath exposed to the cold. The bodies were gone. There were no animal tracks, no signs of digging by claws or paws. Whatever had opened these graves had done so with care and had taken the dead. Labelle searched for any sign of where the villagers might have gone. That's when he noticed something strange. The snow around the village was untouched. No tracks, no sled marks, nothing. It was as if the people had vanished into thin air. Later, he would tell authorities that on that day, the sky above Anjikuni Lake glowed with an unusual light. A shimmering, pulsating blue that seemed to ripple like the aurora, but lower, closer, almost touching the treetops. Labelle made the long, grueling journey to the nearest telegraph office. He sent word to the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. Within days, a team arrived to investigate. They confirmed everything. The village was empty. The fires were still burning. The dogs were dead. No tracks led away. And then they found something even stranger. The village's burial ground had been disturbed. Graves were open. The bodies were gone. From here, the story fractures into speculation, starvation or flight. Some suggest the villagers fled due to famine or threat. But why leave food, weapons, and warm fires behind? Enemy attack. Could another group have taken them? The lack of struggle, the untouched supplies, and the missing footprints argue against it. Supernatural. Some locals whisper of the torn garsuk, spirits that can lure people away into another realm. Others speak of strange lights in the sky, hinting at something not of this earth. The official silence. The RCMP's official records on the case are sparse, leading some to believe the incident was quietly buried, perhaps because the truth was too strange to explain. Today, Anjikuni Lake remains remote, its shores quiet. No trace of the missing villagers has ever been found. The story has passed into legend, a cautionary tale told around campfires, a mystery that refuses to fade. In the end, we are left with only questions. What happened on that frozen shore in 1930? And if it could happen once, could it happen again? Some say, on certain winter nights, you can still see lights dancing low over the lake and hear voices carried on the wind. Whether they are echoes of the past or something else entirely is for you to decide.